Hello again, I'm Joe Walsh, founder of inglesporinternet.com for Spanish speakers and cogdex.com for the entire world. I'm a professional English teacher, and I'm also someone who speaks Spanish as a second language. I began learning it as a little kid, like millions of other Americans, and also I've spoken it now for years in my adult life for work, personal relationships, and also as a result of more than several years, actually, quite a number of years living in different Latin American countries. And sometimes people ask me, was it easy to learn Spanish? And well, I mean, was it easy to grow from 5 feet tall to 5 feet 9? It's just something that takes place over a long period of time in my case, because it's been an important part of my life. But the one thing that still gives me trouble right now, I would say, is in Spanish, they actually have several words for you, Y-O-U. In English, in official standard English, we only have one word, Y-O-U. If I'm talking to you and you're one person, it's you. If I'm talking to you and you're 1,000 people, it's still you. If I'm talking to you and we're in a very formal event, it's still you. And if I'm talking to you and you're my little brother, it's still you. In Spanish, of course, they have different words for all of those. So it's tú is the most commonly used word for talking to someone like your little brother or your friend or in an informal place. Some countries and some regions use vos instead of tú, which makes it even more confusing. And they have another word, usted, which is if you're talking to someone in a slightly more formal setting, and it varies a lot from one country to the next. So some countries hardly ever use usted. In particular, Spanish people from Spain have told me that they really don't use usted or ustedes much anymore, while there are some countries where people use usted more than tú or more than vos. And they don't really think of it as being very formal. They just kind of use them as synonyms of each other. So for me, that's the biggest challenge, is keeping these two words straight. In particular, when I go to a new country, here in the US, especially in Boston, the Spanish-speaking community is mostly from the Caribbean, countries like Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, a little bit of Cuba, the north coast of Colombia, for instance, and they tend to use tú a lot. They don't use usted so much. So that's what I am most accustomed to, is just using tú. And it's difficult, especially if I'm talking to someone who is younger than I am, to start calling them usted. I feel like, what am I talking to, a police officer? But and then I mix them up sometimes. So I start calling someone as usted, but then in the same sentence, I'll slip and start calling them tú, which is a complete mistake. Fortunately, Spanish speakers are pretty understanding about this. Okay, it's not the kind of grammar error where usually you're going to really offend someone. I guess you could offend someone if you're talking to a judge or a police officer or someone in a big important position of authority, but I don't think I would forget to use usted in that case. I think I'd be so scared that I would be calling anyone who walked by usted. Okay. If you have any advice for me about keeping tú and usted straight, or keeping these different kinds of words for you straight, or if you speak a different language where they also have different words for you, tell me about it in the comments. And if you'd like to learn more grammar with me, check out my best lesson ever, All the English Grammar You Need in 2 Hours. See you later. Bye-bye.